Hello, everybody. I am Musa Shehada, a Palestinian refugee from Gaza Strip. I was born originally in Al Bureij refugee camp. It's a refugee camp in the middle of Gaza Strip. My family, my grandparents came originally from the village called Zarnuqa. It's in the north of Palestine, next to Al Ramla city, not too far for to Yafa. So mainly I am a refugee, and I was born in another refugee camp. Then I grew up as a refugee in a Nusayrat refugee camp with my family, with my extended family. My family was my family name is Shehada, and I have 6 brothers and 6 sisters. Unfortunately, I lost a brother and a sister. My sister was sick and she was passed away, and my brother was killed by the Israeli occupation while they were in Gaza Strip next to a settlement. He's the brother who is older than me, just with 2 years. His name is Khalil. So I grew up in the Nusayrat refugee camp. I studied my primary and secondary school in the schools of UNRWA, the United Nations. So after that, I got my high secondary school in 2005. I went to the Islamic University of Gaza to study English language, and I was graduated from the IUG, from the English department in 2009. After that, I worked in Gaza as a teacher for secondary schools just for 1 year. Then I moved to work in Al Amal Institute for Orphans. This is the orphanage, the only orphanage in Gaza who was settled, who was created to help the Palestinian children, the Palestinian orphans who became orphans after Nakba. So this orphanage was established in 1948 after the Nakba. Then just I worked there as a supervisor for kids and a teacher of English language until I left Gaza. I left Gaza in 2016. I left Gaza because I had some private problems, and there are general problems for all Gazans uh, who live under the occupation and who live under the siege more than 17 years now. So there is lack of employment, there is lack of electricity, and the life is getting harder there. That's why I left Gaza in 2016 in order to find a safe place to live and to live with my family, also with my wife, and to have kids to live in peace, and also to search for another chance to get a better future work. And I'm looking also to have to get my studying high studying nowadays.
So tell me,
Yeah.
Hi,
Yeah.
So you grew up in a refugee camp in Gaza. So how did your family end up in Gaza? What happened that drove your grandparents from their home? So you can trace your family back how many years in Palestine? 100 years, 500 years, 1,000 years that your family have lived
Yeah,
in Palestine. How long do you think that your family has lived there?
my family lived there more than 100 years.
More than 100 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
more than 100 years in Zarnuka city.
Mm-hmm.
The family name is Shehada,
Mm-hmm.
and also my grandparents by the time were lived there, and they had a small house. They had a small farm there, and they they lived in peace. But unfortunately, when the Israeli occupiers, colonizers came in 1948, and it was the year of Al-Nakba, as many and as thousands of Palestinian families they kicked out from their villages. My family forced to leave the village in order to search for a safe place, and they left everything and they moved to Gaza Strip. And from that time, they settled in a Nusayrat refugee camp. It's in the middle area of Gaza Strip, and they lived their families, but they had a wish to come back soon to their families when the war is over, or but unfortunately the Israelis destroy the family, destroy the village, destroy all families. They killed all families who still there. So they demolished now the Zarnuka area, Zarnuka village, where they used to live. No more Zarnuka right now, unfortunately. So they left, they left their houses, they left everything in order, but they still have home, uh, and they teach us more about our village, and about the right to return, and to be steadfasting, and always have hope to return back to Zarnuqa, to your village, your original village.
So what age were your grandparents when they were forced to flee? Were they in their 50s or in their 60s, or what age would they have been at the time? And how many people lived in the village? And was it like a rural community? Was it all farmers, or the people work in a local municipality, or what exactly? Trying to find
Yeah.
out, they were living in peace. The Jewish people started emigrating or migrating to Palestine from like 1901 on, the Jewish National Fund buying up land, buying over properties, and then that the number of Jewish people became larger and larger and larger. And I know, like after we might talk about the Balfour Agreement and the riots in Jerusalem in 1926. So specifically, your family had lived there for 100 years.
Yeah.
They lived there before the settlers arrived. Many of the settlers arrived. And then, so how did life change? They were living in a Palestinian community. And how many children did they have? You have uncles and aunts and cousins and an extended family?
Exactly. I don't know all these
It's okay. Yeah.
informations, so I have to call back my mom to know if she has more from, because both of them are died a few
Yes, your
years ago.
grandparents?
Yeah,
Yep,
the
yep, yep, yep,
grandparents.
yep.
So I don't know exactly how many people were there in the
In the
village,
village? Okay.
but I think my mom knows.
Okay.
Yeah, and I can get this information later.
Okay. So there was like a program of terrorism from the Jewish settlers, from the Ergon
Yes.
and the Lehi and the Stern Gang. And these people were like a shadow government in Palestine waiting to take over once the United Nations, encouraged by Britain and encouraged by
Yes.
America,
Yeah.
to give 52% of Palestine to 10 or 15% of the population who hadn't been born in Palestine, but were all emigres from Russia and France and America. And I believe after the Second World War, many Jews who were victims and survivors of the Holocaust were
Yes.
welcomed into Palestine.
Yeah.
But how they treated the Palestinians in return is really a story that we would like to explore. So, can you tell us what the Nakba meant to your family, what the Nakba is for people who don't understand, and how that led to your grandparents going to Gaza, and then you have uncles or aunts or
Yes, I will tell you about them
okay, go
now.
ahead.
So, after Nakba, my family,
What
I
was the Nakba? What actually happened for people who don't understand?
yeah, and Nakba, it means the disaster that the Israelis bring it or did it with the Palestinian families. They came from all over the world. They gathered in Palestine, and after they got um, a recognition from international from international communities to have what's so called Israel on the Palestinian land. It was in 1970, 1947. They got this decision, and they declared that Israel is for Israelis. Palestine no more welcomed in Palestine. So Palestinians are not welcome. So they committed many massacres to force the Palestinian families, to leave their villages in order to establish a new and modern villages for Jewish people who came from all over the world. So they forced the Palestinians to leave their villages, to leave their houses. The majority of them left in that time because they want to be safe, and they were afraid to stay there in order to be killed like other Palestinians. That's why my family left their village, and they came to a refugee camp run by UNRWA. It
That's
was
the United Nations
United Nations
for
for
refugees.
refugees, for relief refugees. So my family was about no, my family was about two brothers, mainly two brothers and two sisters. I now speak about my uncles and my aunts. Okay, so my father was one of those brothers. He was small. I don't know exactly his age, but he was small. I can't tell you
He was
after.
young when he moved to Gaza
Yeah,
as a refugee.
yeah.
Yep.
He became a refugee. He came to Gaza while he was very young. So he has two brothers and two sisters. After a few years of living in Nusayrat refugee camp, uh, my uncles started to search for a better life because it was difficult for them. No more aids, no more jobs, no more fars like they left before. So all of them, and not all of them, three of them left Gaza. So my two uncles left Gaza. One went for Egypt, one went for Kuwait for work and do their families. And my aunt went to Jordan, and another aunt is stayed in Nusayrat refugee camp. And they started to have families there and restart their life and adapt with this routine and they still waiting right now. They still waiting. The alive persons of them still waiting to achieve the return to their village or the village of their fathers. And this is the situation.
Okay, so the people who were forced to flee, your grandparents and your parents and your uncles and your aunt, uh, they all feel that they have a right to return to their home. They
Yes.
were forced to leave as refugees, and under international law, as like non-combatant civilians, they have the right to return to their homes.
Yeah.
But the Israelis deliberately knocked down all the houses,
Yeah.
destroyed the village, so there are no homes to return to, and that was the policy to make sure that people weren't allowed to return, and if they did, they had nothing to return to. So, what was it like? Do you know for your parents then growing up? They were young, they had been forced to leave their home, they had a whole new set of challenges to go through, they had a whole new way of life to become accustomed to. It must have been very traumatic. They left with just the clothes on their back and what they could carry, and maybe memories of the Israeli soldiers forcing them to leave. Over 750,000 Palestinians were forced to leave in the Nakba, and there are now between 6 and 8 million of the
No.
diaspora who
Yeah.
all want to exercise their right to return. So, did you ever speak to your parents about what life was like for them as they were growing up? How difficult it was? No.
No.
So, what was your life then like growing up? You were born in Gaza?
Yeah, I was born in Gaza Strip. I
Yes.
mean, there's a middle in area of Gaza Strip, and some refugees camp. One of the refugee camp called Al Burej. I was born there, but while my family lives in Nusayrat refugee camp, they are close together. Why I was born there? Because there was only one clinic or one small hospital.
No. Go ahead.
So one small hospital for both refugee camps. So I was born there in 1987, in July 1987.
And were you the oldest or were you the youngest or?
No, I'm number 4 at my brothers.
Right, you're the
Yeah.
fourth son,
The fifth son.
fifth son,
Yeah.
yes. And there's 12 children in
Yes.
total? Six boys
Yeah,
and six
we were
girls?
12. We were 12. Alive 12 children,
Yes.
6 and 6.
Okay, so
Yeah.
did you have a house that
Yes.
you all grew up in? Did you have
We
4
have
bedrooms?
a house for all family. I mean, my grandparents, my father, mother, all brothers, sisters, and another part of this house is for my uncle.
So you have 16 people living in one part of the house.
In one, yes.
And how many is with your uncle? There's his wife and his children?
His wife, and there were I think there were two with 2 kids. Then they left.
Okay,
They left the Gaza Strip.
so at one stage there were 20 people living in one house. How many bedrooms?
How many bedrooms? There were 7 bedrooms.
Okay, so 7 bedrooms
7 bedrooms
for 20 people.
Yeah.
And that is the life of a refugee when you're forced to flee
Yeah.
from violence. So, what are your earliest memories of being in Gaza? Was it going to school? Was it?
Yes, I remember. I went to UNRWA schools at primary and secondary.
Okay, but what was it like in primary school?
Yeah.
Were there lots of children in the classroom? Were you very poor because there were so many
Yes.
in the family?
At the primary schools, we were from 40 till 45, 49 student in the class.
Okay, 50,
The cla-
50
yes,
children in one
about
class.
50
Yeah.
children in a class. and the class is not a big one, but it suits
All boys
this
or
number.
boys and girls or
All boys.
all boys?
Boys
Okay.
schools are alone and girls are alone.
And just one class, or the class was only for like 5-year-olds, and then another class for 6 and another class for
No, it
7, or
wasn't one class. It was many classes. So I
yes.
remember at the primary school, maybe we were mm, maybe about 10 classes.
Okay, so
10
400,
classes.
500 students
Yes.
between the ages of 5 and 11, 12,
Ages from 6
from 6.
till 12.
And was it a difficult school? Did you enjoy school? Was it?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. It was it was crowded but it was يعني it was good. It was good school,
Hmm.
and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed my studying there, and the teachers were very nice.
And
So
what about your childhood then? You would come home from school, and what would you do? Would you do homework? Would you do chores in the
yes,
house?
of course. After the school hours, we went home. We started to eat first and change our clothes and take a shower sometimes. And after that, we started to do homework. Then we got sometimes to play with our friends, our neighbors at streets, because there were no playgrounds, no more places to play football, for example, or to play with marbles or something like this. So we all the time we were played at school. We played all the time. Sorry, at streets.
What
So
games did you play in the street?
uh,
You played chases?
for
You
me
chase
I
each other,
played
or
no
you have a
football,
bicycle, or
football.
football?
The majority time I played football,
Mhm.
and sometimes I rode bikes. So, but while I'm getting younger, when I was 12, I started to ride bikes.
Mhm.
So I like riding bikes
Okay. And did you
and going to the sea in the summer as well.
did you see any violence as you were growing up? What's your earliest memory? Was there before the settlers arrived? Was Gaza under siege? Was it bombed by the Israelis? What's your memories of growing up? Were there soldiers on the streets, or did that come later? Or
I forget to tell you that when I was born, it was in July 1987. After just about 1 month, 1 month and a half, the Palestinian Intifada, the first Palestinian Intifada, had started in September 1980, in September 1988, no, 1987. In the same year, after just 1 month, 1 month and a half, the first Palestinian Intifada had started, and Palestinians were be arrested, were be killed more with the Israelis who were occupying Gaza Strip, because at that time they were occupying Gaza Strip, and they were in our refugees camp in all borders. So the Intifada, the Intifada means the uprising. It was um, it was too hard to, as I remember, and as I told also by my family, it was too hard to them. The Israelis from time to time arrested our Palestinian neighbors, our people that we know in refugees from time to time. They torture them. Sometimes they kill them if they throw stones to the Israeli army who were in our streets all the day, all time. So I remember when I became 3 or 4 years, I remember some Palestinian fighters who escaped from the Israeli occupations and get in our house. After that, the Israeli came and broke down the door of our house, and they were shouting and they were looking for the fighters, but they already escaped from another window that we have. It wasn't high to the other street, so they jumped and they ran away. When they find no one there in our house, they took my brother, the oldest one. They took him and
What age was he?
sorry,